What I'm going to do here for you is explore the parameters of a linear equation. Now, remember, a linear equation is in the form y equals mx plus b. The y and the x stay there because that's going to be the set of points that make the linear equation true. But the m and the b are constant terms that can be manipulated to see what properties they have. What we're going to be doing is exploring these particular things that I've already written in this spreadsheet over here. To get the spreadsheet view for GeoGebra, you just click over here on the right hand upper corner, and you want to make sure you have spreadsheet, graphics, and algebra selected. Now, this is just a running commentary of what you've written. Here is where you have the input. What we're going to do first is look at a particular linear equation. And this linear equation is going to be y equals 0.8x plus 3.2. Okay, so here's our line F. Now, what I can do is I can click on my line here. Let's look at the properties. Hopefully it's unlocked. In one of my past videos, we were unable to go left and right depending on whether it was locked or unlocked. So notice here that it changed the equation to standard form, ax plus by equals c. That's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to try to move it left and right. Now if you move it left, or if you move it up, you're not going to notice the difference in the line. If you move it down versus right, that's basically the same thing as well. Now notice that when I move the line up and down, my value of c over there is changing. My value that is the coefficient of x does not change because that's not changing the slope of the line. Anytime I move a line, the slope will always stay the same. I would actually have to change this slope to be able to change the coefficient of my x term. So to be able to move the line in this way, of course, since it's only changing position, it's not really changing shape, this is going to be a translation. We will probably explore algebraic translations with linear equations at a later time. Right now we're just going to focus on the m and the b in y equals mx plus b format. So don't need this anymore. I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and instead I'm going to create sliders m and b. Y equals mx plus b. And we're going to create those two sliders, a slider for m and a slider for b. Now on these two sliders, you can change these values and how they are changing by going to the settings. Over here on the right hand, the name is M, and let's go to the position, or basic maybe. Let's see, slider, here we go. Select slider, and I want a minimum value of -5 and a positive value of 5, but I want my increment to be 1/2. So I'm going to change that there. And actually I changed my mind here. Let's go from -3 to +3 and see what happens with that. Okay, very good. Got that fixed. So make sure when you're entering these values here that you press enter so that it is actually applied to that slider. So here I need to select -3 and press enter. Notice that that finally changes this to a -3. Change this to a +3 and press enter, and that changes that to a +3 there. Okay, now we've got it. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to change the slider for B . Do I have it on slider B? Let me check. Okay, settings. Here we go, I've got the correct one now. My increment is going to be 1, and I want it to go from -5 to +5. Don't forget to press enter so that it applies that particular value. Okay, now we've got our line F in the format y = mx + b, and we've got our slider for M, and I've got my slider for B set up. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create an intersection point between the line A, or in this particular case line F, and the y-axis. So we're going to have to select our intersect tool. Let's see, I don't see my intersect tool here. Here it is, it's under point. And I want to select my line and my y-axis. So this point A is going to move depending on what I do to my line for the parameters. And of course for this point I want to display the coordinate pair. So let's see, we're going to show the label. And record to spreadsheet. No, that's not it. I guess I'll have to figure that out. We can always hover over it to figure out what point it is though. So if you're new to GeoGebra, just experiment and play with it and see what it'll do. Okay, we're also going to create a point at the origin. So here we're going to select point, and we need to hover until it has X and Y axis selected. And so B is my origin. I'm going to relabel that. Just right click and rename. And I'm going to rename that my origin. There we go. And then what we're going to do is use the slope tool to calculate the slope of the line. And don't forget to create a segment that connects point A and the origin. And then what we're going to do with this is we are going to make this a lot thicker and possibly a different color. So go to Style, we want to increase the thickness, and let's change that to blue. Okay, so we've got point A to point B, which is actually the origin here. Okay, so I think we're ready to go here. Let's make some observations. Alright, so I'm going to take my slope here, and I'm going to, just a second here. Don't know what I did, so I'm going to press undo. There we go. Okay, so my slope is 1, and my y-intercept is 1. This is where it crosses the y-axis. So here I'm going to figure out what happens when the slope changes. Notice that my slope is 0, and then it flips in the other direction. And I just animated this slider, by the way. So it's still intersecting this y-axis at the same exact point. The only thing that's changing is this slope here. And notice as my slope gets larger in absolute value that it's automatically going to get steeper. As it gets smaller in absolute value, close to 0, it's going to get more shallow. And at 0, notice what happens. At 0, it is a horizontal line. So now let's look and see what happens when we change the y-intercept. So as the y-intercept gets larger, it gets further away from the origin. And then it's at the origin when the y-intercept is 0. And as b gets smaller and smaller, it gets further away from the origin again. And you can see that in this animation clearly because we went ahead and looked at this as a thicker line here. So there you go. You can create sliders for M, for B, and use it to teach your students how to figure out what the slope and the y-intercept does to an equation of a line. You can also create sliders for the A, the B, and the C for the standard form of a line, and they can actually figure out what the A and the B and the C are and how they're related to each other and how that's related to the slope-intercept form of the equation of a line. Thank you for listening.